We are going to install Kali Linux today, and to install the Kali Linux, we need VirtualBox, which is already installed on my machine, and we need ISO file, which we will download from official website. So just Google for Kali Linux. It will give you suggestion, and the first link is kali.org, which is official website. You can download Kali Linux from this website. Click on download, and then there are different options for Kali Linux. So best options are Baremetal and virtual machines. We are going ahead with the Baremetal. So under Baremetal, you will see the options like Kali Linux for 64-bit 64-bit architecture, 32-bit, and Apple M1. So my machine is 64-bit, and I'm going to download 64-bit ISO file here. I have already downloaded ISO file, so I'm not going to download again. I have under softwares, OS images, I have Kali Linux 2021.2 installer, so that is already available. So I'm going to jump directly to VirtualBox, and in VirtualBox, I have to click on create new button to create the Kali Linux virtual machine. I'm going to give name as Kali Linux 2021, and I have to select the type as a Linux, and the version will be from here since Kali Linux option is not available in this. So I'm going to select Debian 64-bit and click on next. So here we have to give the RAM. So I'm going to give RAM 4 GB. So 4 GB is, I feel it is a good amount of RAM for Kali Linux. And then we have to create the virtual disk. So here I'm going to keep the option, default option. I'm not going to change anything here. Click on create. And then it is asking for hard disk file type. So here also default file type, which is VirtualBox disk image. It is sufficient. So I'm going to keep that option. Click on next. And then storage on physical hard disk. So how you want to store the disk file, whether it is dynamically allocated or fixed size. I'm going to select dynamically allocated. So this disk file will expand as we use the virtual machine, and fixed size it will create the entire disk. Let's say we have selected 12 GB of storage, so it will create the 12 GB file on the disk immediately. So let's go ahead with the dynamically created, and I'm going to change the file size, actually the disk size. So by default it is recommending 80 GB, so 8 GB, sorry. So I'm going to create the 30 GB of the disk, and this is my default path where the VirtualBox VDI file will be stored. So I'm not going to make change to that, and I click on create. Now the VM is created, but before starting up this VM, we have to make few more changes in the settings. So click on settings. In settings, you will see the options which we have already selected, and go to system. In system, we will change the number of processors. So I'm going to make it 2. In display, we don't have to make any changes. If required, we can increase the video memory, but I'm going to keep it default value. And then in storage, we have to attach the ISO file. So under controller ID, there is empty CD DVD. So I'm going to click on the CD icon and choose a disk file. So I will go to the location where ISO is stored. So ISO is stored in software drive, and click on Kali Linux and then click on OK. So now we have given Kali Linux ISO to boot the VM, and I'm going to start the VM. So the VM will start the installation process. So as you can see, it is asking us to either do graphical install, install advanced options, and etc. So the most famous option is graphical install. I'm going to continue with the graphical install. Now we have to select the installation language. I'm going ahead with the English language. Click on continue. And now this is asking for country, territory, or area. So I'm going to select other because uh, it is not showing the country which I require. And click on continue. And continent now it is. So continent is Europe. If you, the country where you are located, it is showing, then in first screen itself you can select that country. In my case, it is not showing that country. That's why there are additional steps. And the country is Sweden. I have selected Sweden, then click on continue. Now country to this local settings. I'm keeping the default option here. Click on continue and key map to use. So the keyboard layout which you are going to use. I'm going to use Swedish keyboard layout. So I'm going to select Swedish. You can select that according to your keyboard layout. Click on continue. Now we have to give host name. I'm keeping default host name, which is Kali. It's up to you. If you want, you can change the host name. And let's click on continue. So here it is asking for domain name. I don't have any domain, so I will be keeping this domain name as empty. And it's optional. If you want to configure the network, you can provide the domain name. And on this page, we have to set up the user. So we have to give the username. I'm giving username Tekibia. Click on continue. And username for the account is Tekibia. It has selected by default same username. And continue. Now it is asking us to select the password for that username. And I have selected password. Continue. Now it has detected the disk, the 30 GB disk which we created with the virtual machine. And now it is asking us to create the partition. I'm going to select the first option to create the partition, which is guided, use entire disk. Click on continue. And it is showing that 30 GB of disk which we created. Click on continue on this screen as well. And here it is asking how you want to store, how you want to create the partitions, whether you want to store all files in one partition, separate home partition, or separate home var and tmp partition. So in this case, it can be anything. I'm going to select the last option and continue. So it is telling me, okay, so these are the partitions, and it is going to write the partition table, and it is going to write to the disk. So click yes to write changes to the disk and click on continue. Now installation of the Kali Linux is started. Yeah, on this screen it is asking for the packages to be installed. So I'm going to keep the default packages like desktop environment, XFC. It is Kali's default desktop environment, and then a few default collection of tools and etc. So I'm not going to make any changes. Click on continue. Now the installation is completed. Now we have to install Grub bootloader, and I'm going to select /dev/sta for installing Grub bootloader. Click on continue. And here VirtualBox guest additions are installed by default. So we don't have to install VirtualBox guest additions separately, like we do for other operating systems like Debian, Ubuntu, or Oracle Linux. Now installation is complete, and click on continue. So virtual machine is rebooting automatically, and it is asking to boot. So boot with the default option. We have to use a username which we created during installation process, and login. So I'm able to log in, and since guest additions is already installed, so I can resize the screen. And to run the terminal, click on this button, so it will open the terminal, and I can run commands here, ls-ltr, and graphical user interface is also nice. There are tools available here which are default installed: forensics, post exploitation, sniffing, spoofing. Yeah, that's it about installation of Kali Linux. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.